Hello, everyone. This is Raise Your Voice as part of the Fans First Sports Network. We are live on youtube.com/at Raise Your Voice and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Brett Rutherford, joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Darby Robinson. And tonight we are joined by a very special guest, DRaysBay contributor Ben Whitelaw, who has been burning the midnight oil on DRaysBay, pumping out some great content to get you ready for the 2026 season. Ben, first off, welcome back to DRaysBay. I've been loving reading your articles on the site, and welcome back to Raise Your Voice. It's been a few years since you were last on the pod. What have you been up to, man?
Gosh, I feel like it's been I think 2 years. I know we kind of talked
Yeah.
about this a little bit before we started, but yeah, like 2 years. Not much, just existing, working, doing a lot of cooking. I got into ice cream making for a little bit. So whatever my special interest is for the month, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. You know, your Twitter, obviously, I follow you for the baseball, and then I stay for the cooking. And I get a little jealous, like my skills are just not there. And then I see something that you've made, and I'm like, I could probably try something like that. And then I just don't. I keep it simple in the kitchen. I can make a dinner, I can cook. I'm just not quite as creative as you. But I really have been enjoying everything you've been putting out online and on DRaysBay. And I do feel like there's just been like an increase in Rays centric content from a lot of different people on X, on Blue Sky, on different sites, different podcasts. And I just love seeing that. It feels like it's a very exciting time to be a Rays fan, and there's a lot to talk about, both on and off the field with the new owners, the ballpark, and then now obviously the team's back in spring training, getting ready to return to Tropicana Field. And we're gonna get into all that and more on today's episode. But I want to get started talking about the latest news in the stadium saga. Ron DeSantis and the Florida cabinet, they approved earlier today to give the Hillsborough College land to the Tampa Bay Rays to build a ballpark there. This was something that was not really expected to be a major hurdle, but it is the next step in the process, and they did get through it. I think it was another show of support from Ron DeSantis and some of the decision makers from the state of Florida in terms of getting this project where it needs to go before we can put shovels in the ground at some point. I don't know, this year, I hope, if they're planning on playing there in 2029. Darby, again, this wasn't a contentious vote or anything, but what are your thoughts on where we are now after this step that the Rays do have approval from the state of Florida to move forward here?
I mean, I think they're hitting the benchmarks, and they're hitting them like really. I think the swiftness of this is something that really, when we think about it, we're not as exactly used to. I think when we're seeing things that are not supposed to be contentious necessarily or difficult, but they're also just being done so easily that maybe they would have been difficult. Like these are not. I think we might be taking for granted, some of this stuff, that like the parcel of land, like actual land that you need to build, like is basically approved, given the agreements there. Like those were big steps. Like when we've, Lizzie's had a ton of great articles on DRaysBay about basically stadium sites and ideas and locations that could work and way they may not work. And like, all that, like you have to get like 6 plots of land, and that's 6 different owners who all have to sell. I think the swiftness of everything kind of lining up with that, as well as just the continued commitment, like the very public commitment and show of I guess, like there's a lot of wind blowing in the same direction. There is a lot of sides. I think there was an article not too long ago in Tampa Business Journal about how Mayor Castor is very much like talking about how does not want to be the city that loses a team, and how also mirroring the idea of like if you lose a team, the expansion fee to get back in is around $2 billion, which is something that one of the councilmen in Hillsborough also said, was that this is you're playing in the kind of the big levels. And so you also have the governor's office continuing to show that support. You're seeing folks that are normally very hawkish against public subsidies being a little softer on public subsidies. So I don't know. The momentum, there has not been the hurdle yet that you're like, will this happen? And there's a lot of pushback. There really hasn't been yet. That is going to happen at some point.
Probably at the local level.
I mean, we have not gotten to the budget fight.
Right.
Like that still feels, but this is a budget issue here that is not a fight. So that's where it's like,
at the state level, anything that Ron DeSantis has been like in fully support of, like this is a state, at the state politics level that is still dominated by the Republican Party and has been for quite some time. So Ron DeSantis being like in huge vocal support of this, which is shocking, but not shocking at the same time when you look at who has bought the team and his relationship with DeSantis. I do think, it might get a little bit more contentious when you get to the local level, but it does feel like everything is headed in the right direction. So again, not major news in the stadium saga, but we felt like it was worth bringing up. I do want to get to a couple bit of injury news. I'm going to knock on wood when I say this. I'm going to cross my fingers, cross my toes. Compared to some of the other teams around the league, the Rays have been incredibly lucky when it comes to injury news at this point in spring training. We've seen pitchers go down for the year already. Lots of broken hamate bones, which I learned recently that you don't even need your hamate bone. Like you could just get it taken out and that you don't need it to like hit or do anything. Like, I don't know. Maybe we need to do some preemptive hamate bone removals for certain players. But Edwin Uceda, really scary, I think, for a day or two. We learned that he was not going to pitch in the World Baseball Classic for the Dominican Republic. Okay, fine. That sounds precautionary. Then he goes out to play catch like a day or two later, and it's that cranky shoulder is getting crankier, and he's going to go see a doctor. And you never want to see doctor and shoulder in the same sentence when it comes to potentially your closer. We're going to talk a little bit about the plans for the bullpen. Edwin Uceda, though, it seems like it's just an impingement. He got really good news from the doctor. And if he's going to miss any time in the regular season, it won't be much. That's not to say that they won't be careful with ramping him back up. I was starting to look at, okay, who's going to step up and join that A bullpen if Uceda was going to miss a significant amount of time. That doesn't seem to be the case now. And the Rays are already planning to go closer by committee, at least to start the year. Ben, what are your thoughts, like with or without Uceda at the start of the regular season, about where the Rays bullpen is, given their kind of new approach this year without Pete Fairbanks locked in as your ninth inning guy?
I mean, I think it's one of the strengths of the roster. It's just so deep, and you have so many guys who are pretty platoon neutral, whether that's because of the pitches they throw or how they throw them. The only one I can think of right now off the top of my head, and I should probably have roster resource open, is Kevin Kelly. Like, he's pretty much a guy you only really want facing righties, but everybody else has either over the top and they're, fine there with their cut fastball, or they've got like a crazy changeup like Uceda. So, I mean, no disrespect to Uceda, but like they can kind of, weather that storm a little bit easier than they could in other position groups. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, my take on it is you don't want to see any player get injured. You don't want to see any player miss a significant amount of time. But whenever an injury does happen, one lens I try to look at it through is, okay, is this a chance for someone else to step up and prove themselves and maybe show something that you wouldn't have seen had they not gotten that opportunity? Ben, one guy I know you've written about for the site, Hunter Biggie, and Darby is like the biggest Hunter Biggie fan I know. That's a guy who even if you said is healthy and pitching, I think Biggie is going to work himself into some very high leverage situations. He's a guy who had an injury last year, not arm related at all, taking a foul ball off the head in the dugout that derailed his season. But he went and, he pitched in the DR this winter, looked really good. It is kind of ready to have a normal season this year. And you've got Brian Baker, you got mid-season last year. never really got like truly settled in the bullpen, but I feel like towards the end of the year, we started to see some of the reasons why the Rays acquired Brian Baker, and I'm excited to see him kind of work into maybe some more high leverage situations. And then Griffin Jacks, like you traded for Griffin Jacks at the deadline last year when you were a fringe postseason team. You did that for a reason. And the way the Rays have acquired a couple of different starters this offseason, it makes me think it's less likely that Jax is going to be stretched out as a traditional starter. He might open some games for you, but I definitely see him in the 1 to 2 inning role for you this season. And he is, like, by stuff, still your best pitcher in that bullpen. I feel fine about the bullpen, but I'm glad that Uceda is not going to miss significant time. Darby, do you have any bullpen thoughts?
No, I agree with Ben. This is a deep unit, like with a lot of really, really talented guys. So, like to keep it that deep and have Uceda like stay healthy and that back end with Jax, Uceda, Clevenger, and Baker, I think is a really, really good top four. I think that's has the makings of one of the Rays' best top fours in recent memory in that pen, like back end. And I think you really could see this being like one of the best bullpens in Major League Baseball. Like I think that's the ceiling is a top 3, top 5 pen. But there is a lot of room for like guys to like take charge. You mentioned Kevin Kelly. He's not even on the list at roster resource right now. You have Hunter Biggie. He's not on the list of roster resource right now, like in the opening day pen. Now that's obviously not the like be all end all, but you have guys like who actually had some really good innings last year, like Mason Englert. Cole Sulser has been a pretty steady kind of the unsexy innings of the pen, but like really, really useful stuff there. Some new guys that I'm really high on is like Steven Wilson. I think he actually is going to be like really, really good. Has had some good major league stuff. And then you had like some fringe guys that we will probably talk about, like Cam Boozer. Like that's another guy. Like there is so many options to like work in, or Evan Reifert. Like we've talked about him for a while. The guy, all he does is strike out people and also throw balls. Like, so that, he's kind of a little bit of that like Chaz Rowe, just, like, listen, nobody knows where this is going. The batter, the catcher, the pitcher, it's going, it's moving, and good luck to everybody. So it's the one area where I said this the last couple of years. Last year, it was the area that doomed the Rays, but it's still the area I think like I trust the Rays to get right.
But not necessarily because of quality. Like it did feel like there was a lot of bad luck on the reliever side. There was some quality issues. But
the quality was frustrating because you had guys like Pete Fairbanks like blowing saves. Like it wasn't like like Kevin Kelly.
And first half, Edwin Uceda was straight up bad.
Right. Yeah. The first half of the season, he was like possibly tipping or something, but like he was atrocious. You had guys that had like elite level stuff like Mason Montgomery, who just got destroyed every time out. Like he was really, really rocked. And it's interesting that he's a guy that gets traded. That I feel like is a sign that like when it comes to Rays development, if they're giving up a guy like Montgomery, who's got so much talent, I do feel like that's maybe a sign that they're like, I don't think we can unlock it. Similar thing with like Taj Bradley. Pete Fairbanks had some similar shakiness when he came over from the Rangers, but they locked in with him. And I think that kind of is a little bit of a sign that like the Rays were not happy entirely with that bullpen, even though there was some great stuff, but they stuck with Uceda. That proved really valid in the second half. Brian Baker and Griffin Jacks had some like unfortunate luck last year, but both like by all of the peripheries are like two of the top 10 relievers in baseball. So I have full confidence in this bullpen.
It is interesting with the bullpen. I feel like there's a lot of guys that are competing to have a role in the bullpen this season. However, I feel like there's not a whole lot of spots available to compete for because you've got, based on roster resource right now, 5 guys without options. Uceda, Clevenger, Baker, Sulser, and Yoandris Gomez. Sulser, maybe you're not stuck to him. Maybe you DFA him, try to keep him in the org, or he gets an opportunity elsewhere. He seems like the least sticky of the bunch. But you've got a group of guys there with no options left. That typically means the Rays are going to start the season with them because they want to hold on to as many different types of arms as they can. The guys on roster resource with options are Griffin Jacks. He's not going to AAA. Mason Engler is probably going to be on that Durham shuttle this year. Steven Wilson, I don't see him as a guy to go to Durham. I guess it's possible. He's in his 30s, though. The Rays acquired him in a trade this offseason. It feels like that he's a guy that they really like. So it feels like there's not a whole lot of spots. It does make me think, though, that the Durham shuttle will be going like for those last two spots in the bullpen. You're going to see the guys, like whether it be like Biggie. I don't see Biggie starting in AAA, so you got to have a spot for him. But Kevin Kelly and maybe a Cam Boozer, if you can fit him on the 40-man roster, are going to be moving up and down between the big leagues and AAA. You could also see a trade. We talked about Darby. I actually can't remember if we talked about this on air or off air. Garrett Clevenger and Ken Rosenthal mentioning him in trade rumors. And if you traded Garrett Clevenger based on roster resource right now, which again is not the end all be all, I don't think that's how the Eric Neander is sitting and determining who makes the Rays opening day bullpen. But I do think it gives you a pretty good idea of what it looks like. If they trade Garrett Clevenger, he's the only lefty in the bullpen right now. Does that make a whole lot of sense? The reason it might make sense is it clears up a spot in your bullpen for a guy that doesn't have options. And even though you like Garrett Clevenger and you'd probably need the right return to move him at this point, it does open up another spot where you can shuttle guys back and forth. Maybe it's a spot for Cam Boozer. Maybe it's Ian Seymour pitching in a multi-inning bullpen role at the start of the season if they don't want to keep him stretched out in Durham. It does give you a little bit more flexibility and one more open spot to play with. Ben, where do you land on Garrett Clevenger? Keep him or entertain a possible trade?
Oh, I mean, I think if you're the Rays, you're always entertaining anything anybody comes at you with, because you can't just say no without hearing them out. Like if it's a great return and some team overpays, then yeah, let's take it. But I don't anticipate him being traded. I don't think it could happen, 5 minutes from now, but it's not something that I'm banking on. I don't think they're like, oh, we have to move this guy, he doesn't have options. It's relievers are going to get hurt. Steven Wilson is hurt. He hasn't pitched yet. He's got a back thing.
Oh,
so, that's one guy. Somebody's probably going to pull a hamstring at some point next week. And like, that's just how these things go. So, keep your options open, but I don't think they're necessarily a rush to move anyone. And just on Cole Sulser real quick, I believe he has an option. I think he's on a split contract this year, like he was last year. So he should have like one option. I'm not 100% on that. I'm sure someone in our Slack could probably verify, but
how Steve Carney described it to me was basically that he can start in AAA and then has an opt-out date. But I don't think he would necessarily, if he starts in the bullpen, I don't know if he has an option to be able to go back down.
Okay.
So I think it
feels like the Rays have a really good relationship with Cole Sulser.
Yeah, they just hired his brother, right?
There. Oh, did they? I've missed that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Is it the last name? I'll Google it real quick.
Where like even if like tomorrow, if a team called and said, "Hey, we like Cole Sulser, we're going to put him in our big league bullpen," like the Rays would like probably try to work out a trade to make sure Cole Sulser is taken care of, which again shows to like free agents, especially at a different caliber, but like guys like signing here, pitchers like playing for the Rays, like working with Kyle Snyder, and they feel respected in this organization.
Like Forrest Whitley's a good example of that. He just started with the international leagues, have just started up, KBO and NPB, and Forrest Whitley looked pretty good in his first little appearance there. And
it's preseason, right? They haven't started the regular season, have they?
No. Yeah, sorry. Okay. I just like they're similar to us, kind of getting that it's spring training all over the world. But they're just kind of getting like out of camp, and so first look of action over there with Oryx, I believe he's with I think he's with Buffalo, but we have a friend that works over there or worked over there with Oryx. So shout out JT Morgan. But like that's the type of thing, right? Like Forrest Whitley, the Rays control his like rights. He could have easily been in the pile of non-option guys that could work out of the pen. But I think that's a sort of a way to like, you can't guarantee you're going to keep him. And then if you cut him mid camp, then he's now a free agent, but like give him that opportunity to go pursue, similar to Bob Seymour, obviously, but like, I feel like Whitley probably had a bit more, like you have an option. You really could see Forrest Whitley being like a player with this team. Seymour probably didn't have like much room there, especially with Aranda and Yandy and whatnot, but like letting him get a chance to play like really meaningful games. We've seen so many pitchers be able to hone their craft over there, especially guys like Whitley, who's got great stuff, but needs to have that more pitchability. And in Japan, like that is like the kind of the craft of it, right? You have great stuff over there, but like if you can't figure out how to sequence, if you can't figure out how to like kind of be that crafty pitcher, you're not going to last very long over there with the like top level talent that they have. So I think that's a good sign for the Rays to continue to make sure that like guys like Forrest Whitley are like, okay, I'll try a chance with the Rays, because if it's not going to work out, they're probably going to, and I'm like, I have a deal lined up and I want to go over. They're not going to just, kind of screw you over that way.
Yeah. Back to the other, quick piece of injury news. Taylor Walls has been sitting out with oblique tightness. Doesn't sound like it's a big concern. It hasn't been referred to as a strain or anything more than just some tightness. In the soccer world, sometimes it's referred to as like an awareness. Like he can feel something, but it's nothing more than that. But obviously obliques, it's scary, right? Those injuries can tend to linger. What that's meant is early on in spring training, I was expecting to see a lot of Ben Williamson at shortstop in spring training. But now we're seeing even more of him without Taylor Walls in the mix. There's a couple of other players that have, Reynald Delgado, just some guys that are in camp that can fill in at shortstop. But my question is here, and this is going to kind of transition us into the meat of our episode today, which is to talk about some fringe players that might have a bigger impact than what was first expected and who to kind of follow along in spring training. And Ben Williamson, I don't want to necessarily classify him as a fringe player. I think the Rays traded for him to play him quite a bit, maybe not in one position, but he was going to get playing time. I don't know, but Ben, I'm looking at Ben Williamson and I'm seeing him play shortstop. And is there a chance with Carson Williams looking like he's going to AAA to start the season that Ben Williamson could win the quote unquote starting shortstop job from Taylor Walls for the start of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. He looks fine out there. I wouldn't say he looks like a natural. He looks like a good third baseman who's playing shortstop, but you don't have to be like super amazing when you've got like a good arm and good range like that. Like he can hold it down. I don't know if he would play there every day. He really looks like a utility infielder, and that's not a knock on him. I think that's a really valuable player to have, but I mean, the best ability here is availability. So the more Walls is out, like the more Williamson is getting a run, and kind of tying it into another soccer reference here. Like sometimes you just lose your job if you're not able to play for a while, and then some guy comes in and you play the hot hand. And if Williamson or Williams, either one of them, if they end up just taking it, running with it, they could make it a pretty tough decision for the Rays at some point. But yeah, if Williamson is the main shortstop, that seems fine. If Walls is the main shortstop, that seems fine. I personally prefer Carson Williams just because of the impact he can provide, and losing Brandon Lau, you gotta make that up somewhere. But it's really a pretty open race at that position, which is kind of fun.
I think what might play in Williamson and Williams' favor here is that the rest of the lineup is so left-handed. You need to mix in a right-handed bat somewhere. And Walls being a switch hitter, that's fine, but starting against right-handed pitchers. That's another left-handed bat in the lineup. So Williamson, I don't anticipate is going to be the everyday shortstop with the kind of competition of that position. It just doesn't feel like that's going to be how that's filled out in the lineup card this year. It's probably going to be a mixture of Williamson and Walls to start the year, and then Williams at some point. And Ben, we can probably talk about Carson Williams a little bit later. I know your opinion maybe differs from what we've heard publicly about the Rays and kind of what the signs are pointing towards where he's going to start the season. But yeah, Williamson again makes a lot of sense as a utility infielder, but you look around the infield and he's not going to get a lot of playing time that way. I mean, Junior Caminero is your everyday third baseman. Sure, you need to get him off his feet maybe once every 10 or 14 days. DH him so you could play, Williamson at third on those days. Maybe he gets the short side of the platoon at second base with Gavin Lux, but it sounds like against righties, Kevin Cash, I think, was quoted saying on This Week in Rays Baseball that Gavin Lux the plan is to play him every day against righties at second base. So, you look at where Williamson's playing time is going to come from, but then you also hear all the things that Eric Neander is saying about why they love Ben Williamson and why they traded for him. It's like, well, that playing time has to come somewhere. And it just feels like the puzzle piece might be, well, maybe he gets a larger chunk of the playing time at shortstop while also filling in at second and third when you've got Walls you could plug in at shortstop as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him pick up an outfield glove at some point. Like if you can pass at shortstop, you can probably pass in left field or maybe even right field. The arm is pretty solid. Like it's not, I don't think it would be a weapon in the outfield, but he could probably track down a fly ball if you needed to. That doesn't necessarily, guarantee him a spot on the roster, but there are worse players to have kind of bouncing around your field. So, yeah, I think he's a solid option at some point.
Darby, you've probably watched more Ben Williamson than the rest of us with him coming from Seattle. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make too much out of what, I don't know what it's been, like 4 games in spring training, if that, but Ben Williamson, what do you make of how his role might evolve with the Rays early on this season?
Yeah, we've seen him shortstop and second base already and play, I think, 3 out of the 4 games. He's drawn a few walks already. He's gotten a couple hits. I think he is a exceedingly Kevin Cash style player, a guy that can do a lot of the little things, is a grinder in the field. Again, we've mentioned Joey Wendell as a comp. I think that it's pretty easy to do that. He is a guy that has that Joey Wendell, Jose Caballero, just will come to the park, play kind of anywhere. And it's very easy to get him into the lineup, right? It's one of those things where you look at the lineup each day and it's hard to see him not playing a lot of time. He's going to be the utility guy, but on a team like the Rays, that utility is used. It is not just an afterthought. It's not a bench player. It's going to be, a lefty's on the mound, he's going to be in. Somebody you need a rest at short, at third, at second. I think he's just the guy, especially when Kevin Cash is the manager, that is just going to have a hard time not penciling him in somewhere most days.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. I do feel like the way the roster is constructed on the pitching side and on the position player side, that the Rays are going to mix things up a lot more in the lineups. I felt like Kevin Cash was handcuffed in some ways last year, but I also felt like even when he wasn't handcuffed, there were certain guys he just didn't like to play, and there were certain guys that were going to play every day no matter what. And I think that was to the Rays' detriment, not mixing it up. And maybe that's because they didn't have a roster that allowed them to have a more fluid lineup like we've seen in the better Rays teams in Kevin Cash's tenure, where it's a new lineup every day. A guy like a Joey Wendell or a Jose Caballero or now a Ben Williamson, like you said, you he's a utility player, but you find him in the lineup in a different spot, in a different position every day. So I feel like Ben Williamson is going to play. I couldn't tell you exactly how much or exactly where, because I think it's going to be all over the place. But Taylor Wall's injury, I think, is something to follow. based on comments, it sounds like Williams is going to start in AAA. So it's going to leave Walls and then Williamson at shortstop. I don't really see any other player on the current projected big league roster to factor in at shortstop for more than just an emergency situation.
If he does,
the next guy I want to, go ahead.
If the oblique does last though, and we talked about like, potentially losing that job, Walls does still have 2 options remaining. So if he has to start on the injured list, if he has to go there, and Carson Williams is running hot, and Williams is and Ben Williamson is exactly who you kind of have been looking for, you could slow roll it with Walls. He does not necessarily immediately come back. You could still, swap him out for Carson Williams too, but that gives you an option. It's not like not a lock in that you would basically, he will have a job and he will have a role. You don't have to lose Taylor Walls from the roster if things are going well. Now, doesn't sound like he's that hurt, but that is the other wrinkle to it, is all 3 guys have options.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. The next guy I want to get to, and I think we've got the world's biggest fan of this player on the podcast tonight, Ryan Vilade, right-handed hitting corner outfielder, but also could play a little bit of infield as well, who the Rays acquired from Cincinnati this offseason. And Ben, you've been banging the Ryan Vilade drum. I think you and I have probably disagreed on Vilade's outlook. But I'm always willing to listen on your take, and I'm glad we can talk about him here on the podcast tonight. Before we get into like his role on the current Rays roster, just pitch me on Ryan Vilade as if he were a free agent out there looking for a team. Pitch me on why Ryan Vilade could fit on any big league club.
All right, so the Rays are pretty left-handed heavy, right? So imagine if Luke Raley was right-handed and he could also play second base if you really needed him to. That's kind of what we're getting here. Like it's not the exact same like numbers, and maybe it's like a 52% hard hit rate versus a 54, like whatever, but it's plus power, and it's a good enough hit tool to make it work. It's like fringe average kind of. The thing that's most interesting is like the swing change he's kind of undergone in the last year or so, and the approach change. Funny enough, he got his first hit using his old approach where he was kind of like looking up the middle. He's looking a lot more pull side in the air now, and the metrics love that. But really, it's just a mindset shift and a swing change that have unlocked a whole new level to his game that I'm not saying that like Detroit or Cincinnati or St. Louis, I think he was also with the Cardinals over the last couple of years. Like, it's not that those organizations were dumb. Like, they just had quite a bit of depth at like, first base, right-handed corner outfield, maybe not so much the Cardinals. But yeah, I mean, he's a really valuable player and he fits into this roster pretty well. He doesn't have options. So that is kind of,
I think that's in his favor.
Yeah. I mean, because his main competition for a right-handed spot is Malloy, I'm assuming. Yeah. And like you can have your cake and eat it too. Like you can have both players and Malloy just starts in AAA, and if Vilade sucks, then you get rid of him. And all it cost was cash considerations, whatever dollar amount that was. So I don't know. It's as soon as they got him, I was like, this seems like kind of maybe a waste of a 40-man spot. No disrespect to him. I love him now, and I'm sure everybody's kind of aware of that. But it's it's just the more you look at it and the more he survives these roster moves and he sticks around, it's like, oh, like this is like real power. Like this is kind of like the impact that maybe they were hoping for from Christopher Morel last year. So
yeah,
I'm just excited.
I think that's telling, that the fact that there's been additional roster moves and he's been on that fringe and he has stuck around now into camp. I'm going to be really interested looking at his playing time through spring training, where they play him, how he kind of factors in. But like you said, he has no options. Malloy, you could stash in AAA to start the season. And I think that, for a guy like Vilade, it was never a big prospect, didn't really come alive as a hitter until later. These recent years in the minor leagues. I know you put out a piece on the site where he added the leg kick. Maybe he's tapping into the lower body to add more power. He's trying to pull the ball a little bit more, which I think the Rays love, and they've targeted guys that can pull the ball in the air. And if Valade can do that and focus on being a role player and not trying to be an everyday player, that is also going to play into his favor. The major league minimum is the same whether you're playing twice a week or whether you're playing 6 times a week. And so I think Ryan Valade, it's probably one of those where he'll have to earn it in camp, and it's going to be more than just what we see in the box scores from the Grapefruit League games. But the fact that he can play, corner outfield and second base of 3 separate positions. There's probably also some days where maybe Aranda gets a day off against a lefty and you move, Yandy to first and you could DH Valade. I could see that being a solution. The corner outfield against right-handed hitters is probably going to be hard to come from when you have Mullins and Fraley and Simpson and Lux at second base. So it does feel more like a short-sided platoon. I definitely see the path to him making the roster. The question is do the Rays run out of spots, right? We've talked about Williamson being, he's a lock for the roster. Johnny DeLuca is a guy where he's had health problems, but he's another right-handed outfielder that you have. And then Justin Henry Malloy, who probably had at some point a higher prospect pedigree and has flamed out in Detroit, and the Rays were able to get him. He does have the options left. So Malloy and Valade do seem in a direct competition. It does seem like Malloy would have to blow him out of the water, though, to take the roster spot from him early in the season. Darby, any thoughts on Valade here and how he can work his way out of the team?
I do think, again, I saw the move early, and there was some interesting, the minor league numbers are really, really interesting with Valade. I think they're enough there that this is worth a shot to bring in, and I think Ben has made some really good case for him. Guys like Luke Raley, which is a really interesting comp, obviously a bit more power for Raley, but a lot more swing and miss. But kind of similar in that, kind of blocked, sort of around, but enough interesting numbers in the PCL that you're kind of I don't know if there's something there, but there is potentially a good bat, and you kind of want to just take a shot and see for something cheap. I think that's where he is kind of valuable. You take these shots on guys like Valade because worst case scenario, like Ben said, you paid some cash considerations. Who cares? Move it on. But if not, Luke Raley became a 2.5 win player, a really valuable player. And then he turned into Jose Caballero, another 2-win player. I don't know. These are the type of guys and Malloy, it's such an interesting thing that they are in competition because it's very different, but similar in the sense that they're both sort of found money. You bring them in, you bring them into camp, you see what you can get. Maybe they become an impact guy. Maybe they are another, one of these players that the Rays kind of need to do when you are balling on a budget. You have to be able to get guys that can get you that win or 1.5 wins or 2 wins out of kind of, nothing, out of flim-flam, out of nowhere. If you can't produce that, you're not going to succeed. And I think the last couple of years, those attempts, Christopher Morel, Josh Lowe, that totally different player, much higher pedigree on both of those guys, but you needed to see what you could get with them. You couldn't get it out of Cameron Misner. You got it out of Jake Mangum, and that turned into a nice little flip there. You got to keep trying it. You got to keep throwing those darts. And with Valade, the lower Ks, the potential pull side power, those are the things that the Rays are kind of moving towards. And I think Valade has the profile that the Rays are really looking for right now. Malloy has very similar to that with lower the Ks, get more contact, try to be able to attack pitches out in front so that you can pull the ball in the air. Easy said, hard to do, but I like taking these dart throws. And when it comes to Valade versus Malloy early on, if you had to pick, I'm probably taking Valade to start the season because I'd rather 2 dart throws than just one. So coming in, I was actually thinking there is a path for both of them before the Williamson trade. Now with Williamson, I don't know if there's a path for both, but the Chandler injury could open that up. Like, this outfield is totally in flux when it comes to these guys. And like, Jake Fraley is the veteran guy, but he's kind of in that similar mindset of like, you got him for dirt cheap, and you're kind of throwing a dart throw on if the vet still has a couple of 2-win seasons left in him.
And we hadn't even mentioned Chandler Simpson's hamstring when we talked about injury news. And obviously for a player like Simpson, hamstring, pretty big deal. There's also like the bullpen, there's a lot of guys in competition for like one last bench spot that are part of the outfield group. And again, this is just for opening day. I think this was a few seasons ago when we had Eric Neander on the show, and Danny and I talked to Eric Neander, and we asked him about like the opening day roster. And it was really shocking to me how little he cared about who is on the roster on opening day, because he knows that like all of those guys will get an opportunity at some point. Who is on that first game lineup sheet doesn't matter a whole lot. But let's talk about that outfield group and kind of where we think they are right now. It's clear that the Rays wanted to kind of completely refresh the outfield. It looks very different than it did a year ago. I mean, there was a time when it was like Mangum, Meisner, Jankowski every day for like 2 weeks, and you're like, what is going on here? The locks to break camp with the team, in my opinion, is just 2 players. That's Jake Fraley and Cedric Mullins. They're on guaranteed money. They're signed as free agents. Maybe Fraley's not a lock. I don't know how you guys feel about that. It does feel like he'll start the season with the team. He might be the first one out the door at some point, but it does feel like. Do you guys agree there?
I think he starts the season.
I think he's pretty safe. Like he doesn't have options. So
it would have to be like a trade, right? Like someone else really needs an outfielder, and you send them Fraley and you make room for someone else. But I think those guys are locked.
Neander talked about Fraley. He like kind of mentioned him specifically, and maybe it's because that's one of the couple people he spent money on. But he did sort of mention like his play style, his like the bat, like that he does bring. I think he kind of has liked Fraley for a little bit, and he came through. I mean, Fraley came through the Rays organization, so he's kind of been around on the Rays radar for a while. So I don't think he's like just a dart throw. I do think he is somebody that like that was a meaningful bring in, even though, I don't think that the money is like such a huge hurdle to move. But right now, I don't know what you would have to see from Malloy or Valade to get Fraley like kind of off the roster. I don't know if that's possible, especially in spring, which, you have to take everything with a grain of salt.
Right. So yeah, I agree. Like those guys are the 2 locks. And then you have for the last, let's say 3 outfield spots between the starting lineup and the bench, you have these guys all competing for 3 spots, and to varying degrees of confidence that they will make the opening day roster. Chandler Simpson, Johnny DeLuca, Justin Henry Malloy, Ryan Valade, kind of that outfield infield, versatile player. Jacob Melton, Richie Palacios, and Victor Mesa Jr., who's on the 40-man roster. Mesa Jr., I don't really feel like is a shot to make the opening day roster unless there were like a ton of injuries. Knock on wood. However, I do feel like Jacob Melton, one with the pedigree he had coming in, the very toolsy player. We've seen some of those tools on display early on in spring training. He is competing, with a Chandler Simpson, who I think is kind of a polarizing player for Rays fans and how you view him going into this season. And Richie Palacios, who does feel like a big leaguer, but he has an option left. So he's going into his age 28 or 29 season. He's played in the big leagues. When he's healthy, he's had success. but his role is far from guaranteed on this team. Ben, like, what do you make of this group and how they're going to approach this?
I mean, I think just the pool of players they could put in the outfield is better than what they had in the last 2 seasons, really. I mean, not a knock on those guys, and I don't want to like end up as locker room bulletin board material here, but like it's more contact oriented. There's an emphasis on defense, and the power isn't that much. It's not that far off from where it was last year. I mean, the power wasn't great last year. The outfield production was among the worst in the league, but it's kind of gotten better. So, no matter really who they necessarily pick or who ends up on the opening day roster, I think it's going to be an improved. Actually, I'm very confident it's going to be better than last year. Last year, it's hard to be like that. But I mean, the guy Valade doesn't have options, so you kind of assume they'll bring him with the team, with the roster. DeLuca is probably the best defensive outfielder there, so you'd think that he's got a pretty good shot. So we're kind of looking at like one more lefty. I think Melton and Fraley are more. I think they would play a similar role. So I don't think Melton would necessarily make the roster, but Fraley's had a lot of health issues, and Melton might have like the best overall package of tools of any player on the roster not named Junior Caminero. Like it's plus power. Like Cash wasn't exaggerating when he had that quote the other day that Melton hits the ball as hard as Yandy and Cami. Like he does. Like the 90th percentile EVs are like almost on par. I mean, nobody's gonna touch Cami, but it's and it's plus speed too, and plus defense in center field. Like how can you I mean, I guess you could start him in AAA, but it's he's already making some noise, and he's really doing everything he can do to make that decision tough. So any competition is going to be beneficial, and I think we're starting to see that already. But just whoever ends up on the roster, I think it's going to be better than last year, which is exciting because it wasn't too great last year.
Could we see like a really surprise, camp break where it is, an opening day outfield of Mullins, Fraley, and Melton, and Chandler with his options starts in Durham, and you have the bench of basically the two righties, DeLuca and Valade. I don't think I feel like they've talked really highly of Chandler. I think his skill set is something that they have clearly, like Kevin Kiermaier coming in as the early camp, tutor, feels like that is targeted pretty much, he's, again, like we said, he's not tutoring Cedric Mullins, he's tutoring Chandler Simpson. I think Melton is somebody who I'm expecting to start in AAA. I'm totally expecting him to start in AAA. But it would not surprise me that much if he made the opening day roster. If he has an amazing camp, the team has talked very highly of him. That was a trade. Like they were looking at a lot of options. There was a lot of interest in both Shane Baz and Brandon Lau. There was packages together and separate, and like the rumors were flying all over. I think they really, really liked Melton as an option, like as one of their top picks, and I could see it. I could absolutely see it. Like, what do you guys say? Is that crazy? Do you think it's like they're going to do the early? But
I think, and I wish I could give Eric Danner and Kevin Cash truth serum here and be like, what are your true thoughts on Chandler Simpson? I know how I feel about him at the end of last season defensively, but again, he's had a whole off season to work on it. He's now working in camp with Kevin Kiermaier, and I'm not here to give up on Chandler Simpson. I can feel pessimistic about his defense and how it will look moving forward. But he does have the options remaining, and Neander has been quoted multiple times this offseason saying we needed to improve the talent level in our outfield. And while I don't think he was specifically talking about Chandler Simpson a year ago, Chandler Simpson played a lot of outfield for the Rays last year. He was a part of that group that underperformed. And while he is, still new to the big leagues, figuring things out, a lot of potential, he was part of that group. that did underperform defensively. I know, the batting average was great and he stole bases and it was great. There's no power. There's never going to be. So the average has to stay that high. The base running, he has to steal probably more bases to be offensively, able to stay a part of this team, and he has to get better defensively. So if the Rays aren't seeing that in spring training, it's probably best to send him to AAA. I just don't know what they're going to do because it seems like the tea leaves are pointing towards him starting in left field to start the season and Melton going to AAA. That could change. I do like the idea of DeLuca and Vlade being your right-handed options off the bench. If they were to not break camp with Fraley, I think the reason for that is, okay, we're going to let's say treat Melton as the Fraley replacement. And we believe that Melton is going to provide $4 million worth of value as a player this season. So we can just cut Fraley or trade him. If we cut him and we owe him the money, okay, we're going to just pay him the money and play a better player if they felt that confidently about Melton. So again, I think it's kind of an easy choice. Like, it'll be an easy choice by the end of camp. Either they're so blown away by Melton that he's going to be a good player this year, or they're not convinced yet. So we'll just start with Fraley and we'll bring a Melton up in May or June and give him the playing time then. So like Ben said, this is a really good problem to have. This is a better group than they've had in a while.
Deep.
They
really
threw numbers
deep
at the problem, but they didn't just throw numbers at the problem. They targeted specific types of players, contact oriented. It just does feel like, again, the roster's going to be fluid. The lineup's going to be fluid. All of these guys are going to get to play. We're not going to be stuck. Even though I like Jake Mangum and he did a fine job last year when, having to step up and play as much as he did. It's a little tiring when you're losing all those games and you're like seeing the same guys get starting every game.
When Jake Mangum is your best outfielder, that's a big
is a problem.
Big problem. That is a crucial nightmare problem to have.
Yeah.
And I feel like Mangum would also would agree. He'd be like, this, I should not be here in this. He's a contributor. Yeah. He's not the lead.
Definitely. And Jordan, I'm glad that we can provide a bright spot in your evening. And I hope your daughter feels better very soon. Thank you for tuning in. Let's pivot to some of the other players that I think are going to be interesting to follow throughout spring training and early on in the season. Let's pivot to the catching position. So it seems like the Rays, unless they go out and make a trade or sign one of these remaining free agents at the catcher position, that it's going to be Hunter Verdusha and Nick Fortes to start the year. I want to talk about Dominic Keegan. He is the other Rays catcher on the 40-man roster. He has worked his way up through the farm system after being a fourth-round draft pick in 2022, so 4 years ago. Ben, tell me a little bit about Dominic Keegan and how we should view him as a prospect going into this year.
It's a bat first catcher for sure. The catching isn't as bad as you'd think when somebody calls someone a bat first catcher. Like he works really well with the pitchers. The throwing it's not great, but I mean that can still be cleaned up because the arm is average. So you can just work on that exchange. But it's plus power, and that's really exciting from a catcher who has like maybe an average hit tool. So he's making plenty of contact. It's good contact. It's not all like ground balls. I think because he kind of lost a lot of his season last year with injury, he's probably going to start in Durham, but I think we'll most likely see him at some point later this year, and he can infuse that position group with some power. So he's an exciting guy. But again, this is kind of like these three catchers that we have on the 40-man. They're kind of better than the three catchers as a whole that we had the last couple seasons. Like I know they threw some money at Jansen and it didn't work out, but this is a pretty good group. It's and the offensive production wasn't great last year. So to say that it's going to be better this year isn't like too exciting, but you have the outfield better than last year. Catching group is better than last year. It's going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I got to watch a little bit of Keegan last year in Durham. Definitely bat first, although it's not like by no means is it a perfect offensive profile. There is swing and miss. I did see an effort to pull the ball in the air, and when you do make contact, to try to make it count, and turn that into extra bases and home runs. And I think for Keegan, that's probably a really good path for him to get into the big leagues. I'm not raving over his defense, but I thought he was fine when I watched him in Durham. I think he's a fine third catcher. I don't think he's a guy that's gonna immediately, like, I don't think he's a candidate to take Nick Fortes's job to start the season. I think he would really benefit from a full season in Durham, maybe coming up if you have an injury or if you make a trade or if you do something mid-season. I would love to see him really get settled in and have a chance to grow. Like, he crushed the ball at every level of the minors until he got to AAA. So you're facing a little bit better, even though the pitching in the International League is just not very good as of late. So I would like to see him have a little bit more success this season. And I think, he's a fine catching prospect to have. He is not, even though he is like, there was an article about him in the Tampa Bay Times. He is not the franchise saving catcher that I think Rays fans are hoping for, but maybe he does play a role and find some success at the big league level and be kind of that bat first catcher that I think fans like to see, even though, and maybe a catcher, Ben, that benefits from ABS this year, where like framing is less important, and he's been working with the ABS system in the minors, so he is maybe more equipped to handle that than the catchers that have been in the big leagues for a couple of seasons, like a Nick Fortes. I know Fiducia is probably very familiar with ABS. So he has been brought up in a different world than a catcher like Danny Jansen has been, in terms of framing and ABS and maybe some of the other weaknesses that Jansen had, even though he was fine offensively. Darby, any thoughts on Keegan?
I think Keegan starts in Durham. I think that's going to happen. I'm intrigued by the bat. I definitely am intrigued by the bat. I think he starting in Durham will actually be really helpful, because I do kind of want to see him, kind of like what Carson Williams did last year, but just like get a full season under his belt, kind of see how that, not a full season, but like get that season under his belt, kind of work through that. Catching is so difficult. It is the hardest position as a prospect to develop. It is so hard. I think that is something that people really do not understand, like outside of the game. I talked to like Mike Zunino when he was with the Rays, and like one of the things he just sort of talked about is like he's coming in and the first thing he's doing is working with the pitchers. He is working with like the behind the plate stuff, and he is taking a lot of time, energy out of the cage to kind of work on that and focus on that. And that offensive part will all be like the bonus, right? That's going to be extra, but it is going to be like his job is to make sure that those pitchers are comfortable. He knows how to work and kind of call those plays. When it comes to Keegan, I think he's going to have a lot of help with that. He's going to kind of work with a lot of these young guys as they've come through. But I think getting that, that time, we have to be more patient when it comes to the bat with a guy like him, because that is going to be his carrying tool. But seeing pitchers again for that second time in the minors, see if he can actually develop and advance, or if he kind of slides back. I think we're going to see a lot of where his future is. To start the season, though, I sort of said, like, coming in, like, unless there's a Sean Murphy coming in that door, right, I'm fine with Fortes and Fiducia. And then with
Fiducia with a big homer today against the Twins.
I'm very excited to see, like, I think we talked about this, like, my frustration with the Rays catching situation is less about like the type of catchers. I get it. Like, we want to see catchers produce, but I want to see the Rays kind of like go out, select some catchers, and then like stick to it and not just kind of pull the plug immediately. Yeah. And so coming in, having Keegan as your third catcher in Durham, ready to come up with Fortes, who's a very good glove behind the plate, and then Fiducia, who's a very, very good glove. You talked about the ABS. He's been 2 for 2 in the game the other day with challenges. He is a exceptional framer. He knows the strike zone. In the minor leagues, he had like about a 15% walk rate. So like he knows the strike zone, either catching or at the plate. He knows where balls are. He knows where strikes are. And the ABS thing, if he is tapping the helmet, he's probably right. And that's the thing. He can frame a pitch into the zone, but he can also kind of know like when he caught it and it's in the zone.
And he's had a lot of
No,
experience in it
that's
with
right.
AAA. I don't know if the rules are any different in the Pacific League, as the Pacific Coast League, as they are in the International League, but like guys get used to ABS. They've been around it for multiple seasons in the minor leagues. Like that is going to be a benefit. These young catchers that have worked with this, and the young hitters as well, that have came up through the minors with this. The big league veterans, I think, are going to be the ones who struggle with ABS and the challenge system this year until they get a season under their belt to get used to it. We've already done over an hour here. We've got a few more players that we're going to get to. Ben, I want to talk to you about a couple of pitchers that you've written about for the site. Jake Woodford and Mason Englert. You can kind of pick where you want to start, but I want to hear about these two guys and how they might factor into the Rays this year.
I mean, I'll just go alphabetically because that's how my brain works. So Englert is he's interesting because like Mark Topkin kind of mentioned him almost like in passing in an article. Like it's you're reading an article, so it's not really in passing, like it's a sentence on a page, but it was very much like, oh yeah, he's working out with the starters. And then that was kind of it. And it's like, oh, that's weird. So but I mean he's got really good command. He was a former Rule 5 pick who was a starter, picked in the Rule 5 draft. Of course, he's thrown in the back of a bullpen because you can't really just like take a guy from, I think he was straight from AA to the majors. Like that's really hard to start in the majors after, your highest level of experience is AA and the Texas League, I think too. So that's even, the offense is crazy there. But he's getting stretched out a little bit. He pitched 2 innings the other day, right? Wasn't that against Boston, I think? Yeah. So changeup is really good. He's got great feel for it, and that's going to help him get lefties. He seems like a pretty safe bet to be like a back end starter or a bulk, swingman kind of thing. He throws a ton of strikes. And then Jake Woodford, actually pretty different profile. Just a weird, every pitch moves in a way that it's like not really normal, and that's really good if you're a pitcher. Honestly, like one of the best things you can be is be weird, because hitters are trained. I mean, they train themselves. We got like the trajectory machines and everything. They're trained to see certain pitches follow, a certain velocity band and a certain like movement shape within, give or take a couple inches. But his stuff is all so weird, and he throws enough strikes. He's a local guy, so that's kind of cool. He's on a minor league deal, and Englert has options, so they could both be in AAA. But yeah, a lot of interesting competition for that kind of back of the rotation / swingman bullpen role.
I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with Englert, if he makes the team out of camp more as a swingman or a long reliever, or if they keep him as part of the AAA rotation and keep him stretched out, because that's going to be crowded this year too. Like you've got Seymour and Boyle, whose roles are, I think, very much in question after the signings of Matz and Martinez. And then you've got Joe Rock still around, who I think they like. Jesse Schultens is going to pitch a lot of innings somewhere this year. And then your more higher rated prospects like a Brody Hopkins or like a Ty Johnson, who are they going to be in AAA? Like you think they are? Yeah. Where are they going to pitch? So there probably has to do some cleaning up here of the rosters and figure out, okay, who do we need to cut loose and let pursue other opportunities, because they're not only are there roster limits at every level in the minors that are, I think, more strict now under the restructuring in the minor leagues. There's also only so many innings, and you want the guys to throw, and you want to be able to focus on the guys that will have an impact on the big league roster. So I'll be interested to see those guys. Let's touch on Boyle and Seymour as well while we're on the pitching staff. We've talked about Steven Matz and Nick Martinez and what they will bring to the Rays staff. It does make you wonder what's going to happen with Boyle and Seymour. Will they work their way into the bullpen where they keep them semi stretched out, maybe throwing 2 or 3 innings at a time, or are they going to go to AAA? Because we saw some good and some bad from Boyle at the big leagues last year. A lot of good in AAA. I don't know what more he can do at the AAA level. His stuff plays against international league lineups, and he's able to really just pound the zone because he's not dancing around anyone up there. Ian Seymour, though, showed a lot of promise at the big league level, and you want him to throw big league innings this season. I assume that's the same with Boyle. So where do we think they end up to start the season?
I mean, I just talked a lot, so I could let Darby go first.
I kind of personally want both of them in Durham to start the year. I think you're going to need at least 7 starters to get through a major league season. That's your 7 that you kind of want. And like coming in, to camp, I want to see, I'm very, very high on both guys. I actually think Ian Seymour is got a chance to really cement himself as a very, very good kind of middle of the rotation type of starter eventually. I kind of almost like Ian Seymour and Joe Boyle as a bit of this poor man's David Price and James Shields, but with the arms reversed because the flamethrower guy has got the right hand and the other is more crafty as left. They're really, really good looks. They have a ton of potential. I think you could have them be really good in the pen, but we talked about how the pen's pretty stacked. I kind of want to see them kind of work, really consistently work on the things that they need to work on and be ready to call up at any moment's notice. The Rays rotation is nice and deep in a lot of ways with the addition of those 2 vets, but there is still a lot of question marks. Steven Matz hasn't started in a couple of seasons. Can he convert back to that? Nick Martinez has kind of bounced around between starter and rotation. I think he's definitely better as a starter, but you can mix and match with there. But he's also older. He's into his mid-30s. So
you're paying him a lot of money.
How good? But you're paying him a lot of money, but you're paying him that money no matter how many innings he's throwing.
That's true.
Then Shane McClanahan, we don't know how much that arm is going to hold up, but even if it does, he is going to be on an innings limit. And then Drew Rasmussen, even healthy, even as the ace, he's still a 5-6 inning guy. He's not an 8 inning, 9 inning guy. So there's a lot of innings to cover, and that's where Boyle and Ian Seymour need to be ready. And whether that's going to be guys that kind of slide in, if Matz really can't do it and has to go to the pen, that's an option. If Shane McClanahan or Drew Rasmussen need to take a breath, that's an option there. You're going to need to get you 7 guys. So I really want them, even though they are big weapons that you could have early on, it's a long season. It's the marathon. I want them stretched.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I also think, the late great Dave Will said it best. Just when you think you have enough pitching, go out and sign some more. The Rays did that. They, it wouldn't have shocked me if they went into the year with Boyle and Seymour is kind of the 4-5 or the 5-6, where one of them more of a swing man in that starting rotation. But
I thought the Matt signing was it, right? I thought that was the 4th guy, and then the 5th one was going to be Boyle or Seymour, and the other guy goes to Durham.
Because you still have Joe Rock, you still have a couple, Steven Wilson, who could maybe be stretched out. Griffin Jacks,
Jesse Shawkins, Steven Wilson, and Yohandris Gomez all had also potential for that 5th spot.
In the Griffin Jacks, people were talking about him being stretched out again, and
Mason Angler.
That's probably not happening, at least not this season, maybe next season, who knows? So yeah, interesting, and I do like the fact that they have them, right? And I want to see them pitch in the big leagues, but you need to have depth. You need to have.
You also don't want to see him pitch in the big leagues. You want him to be no. It turns out we did not have any space. You want to see him pitch in October because you're slotting him in as a 2-inning role.
Well, that's the thing, and that's I think the tricky situation. And you don't have to make this decision in February. Definitely, yeah, you can make this decision in August, September, and hopefully October. But Boyle, I said the same thing about Boyle that I said about Tyler Glasnow when the Rays first acquired him. I did not buy Tyler Glasnow as a starter, and I was very wrong about that. I don't know. The jury is still very much out on Joe Boyle as a starting pitcher in the big leagues. He still needs to prove it. The stuff is there. It's definitely a command issue. However, I do think you could put him in as a reliever, and he could be very good very soon. You don't want to give up on him as a starter today on February 24th. Maybe you can pivot in August and say, hey, you're going to get the 8th or the 9th inning for us. We want you to throw as hard as you can and to strike 3 guys out, and then to go back and sit down for the rest of the night. That's a fine decision to make then. You don't need to make that decision now. Ben, any other thoughts on Boyle and Seymour?
Boyle was unreal today. That
Yeah.
just look at that pitch map. It is like, I mean, he threw a lot of strikes, but like the pitches that missed the zone were like really competitive strikes. And if he's doing that, like he pound for pound, he might have the best stuff in the entire pitching staff. Like it's him, Shane McClanahan, Griffin Jacks, and then there's like a couple blank spaces, and the next tier is like I don't know, like Uceda, Pepio. I'm just kind of making names up there,
Rasmussen.
but Rasmussen. But like the raw stuff is it's unreal. So excited about him, and I think again this is another position group that's really deep. I'm interested in, and I'm kind of like, I think I'm just about finished writing about it, but I'm interested in what a 5.5 man rotation would look like with the Rays. It's so the optimal amount of days rest from like a WOBA perspective is like 5 days in between starts, and you can achieve that with a 6-man rotation, but then your bullpen is like it can be taxed pretty easily because it's a bunch of 1 inning guys, but a 5.5 man rotation achieves that same amount of rest. And then you have like 5 starters and then the half starter and then a swing man in the bullpen. So
and then also some off days built in.
Right. So then you get the off days, and then the swing man could also come in for like other pitchers. It's it kind of fits like the Rays like innovative MO that they've done openers, they've done other things, like why not a 5.5 man rotation? So yeah, I could probably talk about that for a long time, but I don't think this is the place for that. But it's something
we'll have you back on another episode, because we can make a whole episode out of that. I love that.
Yeah, no, this is you guys are good. You run a tight ship here, good show, super organized. I'm happy to contribute. So yeah, just excited for the rotation though as a whole. Like it's such a deep group, lot of talent.
Yeah, definitely. A couple other guys, quick hits on these guys as we wrap up the show. Yadier Arenamo. I eventually, like, I don't know if it'll be this year. Maybe it'll be a cup of coffee this year. I'm really excited to see this guy play in Durham though this year, and you get to watch him up close and how he plays the game. From what I've read about his defense, and then his bat to ball ability, and just puts the ball in play and makes things happen. Ben, what can you tell us about Yadier Arenamo and what he will do this season?
There was a baseball prospectus, I think it was, like kind of scouting report on him, where it said it feels like you're being pranked when you're watching him swing because it's such a dramatic like bat wiggle. He like really has a crazy hitch. Like there are a lot of moving parts, but he's run like plus contact rates at every level, and he hit like 15 home runs in the Venezuelan Winter League. Like he's making it work. So hey, just keep it going. He's hurt, of course, pulled a hammy, and it does actually look like he'll miss some time. So we only got one good swing out of him in spring training, but it was a fun swing. He had a single, I guess, I think. So
yeah.
He'll be fun to watch in Durham. Maybe he's the second baseman of the future. Maybe he's a utility guy. It depends on what the power looks like.
Kenny Piper, I know we talked about the catchers. Kenny Piper does seem like he'll probably split some time with Keegan in AAA. I know there's some other catchers they have to figure out what they're going to do with, maybe cut some loose. But what can you tell us about Kenny Piper?
He was almost on the opening day roster last year when
Right.
Jansen was like hurt, but not hurt, but almost hurt. And then he finished the year in AA, I think. So that's a pretty steep fall from grace. But he's a really good defender. He's probably the best that's like kind of close to the majors that isn't Nick Fortes. So I don't think he'll be playing much of the majors. And if he is, like there a couple other guys probably got hurt, which is concerning. So he's a solid defensive catcher though.
And then Yoanjus Gomez and Jesse Schultens. both going to be like they're going to probably pitch big league innings at some point. Gomez maybe to start the year on the big league roster. You know, what can we expect out of those guys that are on the fringe of the bullpens? They're not going to get high leverage spots, at least not to start. But what should Rays fans look for when those guys take them out?
Gomez is out of options, so
He probably is.
he probably is on the opening day roster if we had to make that decision today. He's out of options, so he's fine. He throws strikes. Nothing really stand out there. Schultens, they reworked his changeup. The Rays have been really good at that lately with some guys, and it's a plus pitch. And another guy who throws strikes, but he missed all of 24 with injury. Worked his way back in 25. Both former White Sox, Gomez and Schultens. So, good depth for Schultens, I guess.
The Rays, the Rays and the Mets are seem to agree on a lot of pitchers, but the Rays and the White Sox also seem to agree on a lot of pitchers. And while the White Sox have a long way to get back to playing winning baseball, I've always been interested by their bullpen construction the last 2 years. I feel like there's a lot of talent there, and so it's not necessarily a bad thing that the Rays and White Sox probably agree on valuations for a lot of different relief pitchers. And so, spring training, it's not always like I've talked about this on the show. It's not, I don't always enjoy watching games. I don't have quite the eye that I think maybe Ben does at being able to look at these players and view how they're going to produce. But I get a little bit bored watching games. I do like reading about it though, from everybody on DRaysBay and then all of the coverage in the Tampa Bay Times and all the other stuff. I like reading about it and hearing about it from other people that have a better understanding than I do. So I feel like after today's conversation, I have a much better idea of who I should keep an eye on throughout spring training, and I'll watch the games when I can. I think today's game wasn't on TV, or maybe it was and I just missed it. But I'll watch when I can. We'll tune in. Any other final thoughts on spring training or anything before we wrap this up tonight?
The only things that I look for in spring training are swing changes or pitch mix changes. You added a new pitch, added a new pitch shape. The swing is different. You're changing the hitch. All those sort of things. So mechanical changes, and then movement / velo data. Are you where is this stuff sitting? And that's where with Boyle, both of those things just popping electric, just pure lightning, everything. That's what you want to see. It's you want to see him around the strike zone and new pitch / new pitch shape. Love that. When it comes to everything else, it's all just noise, and I just can't wait. I just want everybody to be healthy and get through and get to the opening day. But those are the things that I like to look for, and that's where I love to see our new articles dropping from Ben, where I can be let's analyze what is going on. And there's a lot of great content when it comes to that. Lance Brzdowski's got an amazing Substack to follow. Great pitching analyst there, and when it comes to that type of stuff, I just love to see because those are the things that actually kind of last. The other stuff doesn't really. It's just kind of oh, this guy didn't come up through with an RBI. It's nobody cares. Nobody really cares. You're trying to kind of work on some stuff, but nobody actually cared. They lost 7-2. Nobody cares. Stop caring. It doesn't matter. Half of the games, there's people that are just in there, and you're you hit a home run, and it's against who? I want to see the speed, the velo, I want to see Melton's huge crazy bomb, but he did also hit that off of the juiciest meatball possible. And you should do that against those meatballs. It's better if you do that and you're not missing, but the actual stuff like that, not as sexy, not as exciting as the mechanical stuff.
Yeah. And when we get a little further into spring training, we'll maybe talk about some of the pitchers. There are some pitchers that have shown some interesting things in the Rays this year. And maybe there'll be some other pitchers that join this fringe player group of guys that are fighting for innings. Andrew Wantz, I think, is shown good stuff. Cam Boozer, I know you mentioned Cam Boozer today. Cody Whitley, Joe Rock, like guys are coming in and throwing innings. Like everybody's on like 1 or 2 innings at this point. So it's interesting just watching like the parade of pitchers come out in spring training. But yeah, it'll be fun. And Ben, we'll have to get you back on the show very soon. Hopefully it won't be like 2+ years before you're on again. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Raise Your Voice. Thank you to Ben Whitelaw for joining the show. And thank you everyone for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and then turn on those notifications so you can join us when we go live. And we like to have a little bit of fun in the comments and engage with our listeners. On the podcast side, leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify goes a long way in spreading what we do to more and more Rays fans. And if you really like what we do and you want to say thank you, you can head on over to patreon.com/raiseyourvoice, or you can click the link down on the screen right now and become a Raise Your Voice Patreon member for as little as $1 a month. This season, if we can grow our membership on Patreon, we'd love to do some special content for our Patreon members. And just know that your support is greatly appreciated, as the costs of the show have gone up. We are part of Fans First Sports Network, but there have been some additional costs. So your support on Patreon is greatly appreciated. As always, make sure to head on over to DRaysBay.com to check out all of that great spring training coverage, including the amazing content being published by our guest today, Ben Whitelaw. Once again, thank you guys for listening, and we will talk to you